And then I'll talk qualitatively, but really, I think the big thing at this point is to know that these are literally probably about 10% of precincts reporting. So and we'll show the gen map in a second here. We'll show our baptism tracker. Those are kind of the big two that we tried to rebuild the gen map based off what we learned this weekend from those that sent it in. So that's just from the people in this room and a few other that I threw on there just that I knew for the gen map. Okay. So field one, go. For us as a network, I think the kind of the big things that come to mind is where are we seeing new posts reached for the gospel. That's kind of step one. And so we have, besides the folks in this room, which we know, shout out your installation that you're at just real quick. Fort Benning, Clarksville, Fort Campbell. Northern Virginia, Pentagon, that whole area, Fort Belvoir, right? Any other installations? West Point. Yeah. Princeton. That tough Army installation. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so in addition to that, we have church multiplication going on at Fort Lewis. So there's Tim and Amy Anacone are holding down a church that they have also multiplied. Fort Irwin, there is a church plant. Schofield Barracks out in Hawaii, we also have either church plant, I think we can call, the church plant out there. Fort Richardson, I'm getting the right Alaska installation. Wainwright, okay, sorry, I always get those two confused. There is a church plant out at Fort Richardson, Fort Carson, church multiplication going on with Frederick Steppett. Fort Knox, this is, I think, a cool story, is that a church was left behind and is still being led by the Hahn family and a few other folks. Obviously Fort Bragg. A few folks that, and where we know we have seed sowers, we're not sure if they are at church plants yet, but are Fort Bliss, Fort Leonard Wood, the Naval Postgraduate School out in Monterey, Fort Polk, and Fort Hood. And this will maybe be the fun part, because I think this will be kind of the good part, but in terms of towns or cities outside the gate being reached with the gospel, being reached with movement, the big one is No Place Left Auburn, right? A lot of stuff.
It's crazy.
Crazy amount of stuff going on at Auburn. We have Dalton, where the Middletons are now. Charlotte, where some folks from the Middleton Network are. Princeton. Let's throw out some other towns. Atlanta, Clarksville. Any other towns that we're missing? Highland Falls.
Yeah.
Do Newburgh and all yet? Not Newburgh. Okay, let me make sure. St. Louis, yeah. Asheville or Nashville?
Nashville.
Okay, so we actually have, Nashville, St. Louis. Yeah, Rolinda McKnight. I'm sorry, I completely forgot about that one. Rolinda McKnight is leading a church in St. Louis. Any other cities that I'm forgetting? Okay. All right, so that's field one. I'm sorry. And the second thing with field one, this is, I think, the biggest, just get excited before I say this, or thing to get excited about is that this year alone, the No Place Left Army Network is launching 4 missionary couples to UPGs or UUPGs, right?
Yeah. Three goes.
And what about well,
3 or 4.
3 or 4. Yeah. All right, so I mean, if they're going to, I guess it's not a UPG. You're right. Yeah, that couple's going.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. 4. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm not crazy after all. All right. So field one. Hey, to me, y'all, and remember, there's a big gap in terms of Army installations, right? That we could use some more hubs out there. We use some more everything like that. But remember that we're going to be giving away our best leaders, because the Nowells are not ours, right? They belong to Jesus, and we're going to be sending those folks pretty quick. So field 2, this one's definitely the toughest. So as of May, as a network, since 2013, we had seen about 230 baptisms. I think that's a low number, mainly because there are people in this room who have updated their numbers. So, but just to give you an idea, since 2013, since we kind of started tracking about 230 at least baptism, and that's probably a soft or a low ball number. Field 3, which is a little bit more difficult to measure. What's our metric for field 3? Anybody? Yeah, long-term discipleship. This one's kind of hard to measure in terms of discipleship. But Field 3 and Field 4, we'll put together and we'll pull up the agenda. Chuck, do you mind going over to that far left tab at the top? Yeah, sorry. And again, this is embryonic, okay? So this is based on this weekend, right? We don't have West Point up there.
My
No.
PC couldn't handle that.
No, couldn't handle it. But that is, as I count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 15 churches. That's a very low number comparatively. I think at the start of this year we were at 72, but the gen map needs some work. Okay, so that's why it's really essential. And Chuck's going to talk about the data collection part, but kind of rebuilding from ground up. That's going to be kind of our task in the future. And then Field 5, and so we're going to switch into qualitative now because it's just a little bit easier to kind of talk some of the things that we've seen. Field 5, I think, is right here. So this is a mid-level training, right? And this is occurring kind of in-house, self-resourced. Everybody, we don't have a full-time kind of missionary organizing this. It's just the team here that kind of made this training happen this weekend, and we are seeing a lot more of these trainings, level 1s and mid-levels occurring downstream, which I think is really, really cool. I don't have a quantitative number on that. Maybe it's something we should track. I don't know. Just this is the challenge, is data collection. Okay, but so qualitatively for us, I think that there is for Field 1. I think both we have an increasing kind of heart within the people in this room and the people not in this room to go to the nations, that the UPGs and the UUPGs, that's not just something that we farm out to the folks that are willing to go, but that's something that involves us all. So I know that there are folks in this room, folks that are, have left this training already that are getting ready to and kind of answering God's call on their lives to go to UPGs and to the ends of the earth, right? So that's not just something like, hey, we're getting rid of some missionaries, sending out some missionaries and they're done. That's going to be a regular occurring thing, okay? So that's a qualitative thing to me, that we are owning the No Place Left, not just in the Army, but the No Place Left global mission as a network, and that's huge, I think. Field 2, gospeling. I think that probably the big thing is that we're kind of continuing to see growth in our training of evangelism. So in the 411, I think we've seen a lot of breakthroughs this year in kind of developing that tool, making it our own. So a lot of credit to Austin, and a lot of credit to you all for just kind of getting out there. You can't change a tool until you've tried it like 100 times. Okay, so we're kind of doing that and seeing that happen, and that's forcing some kind of innovation. I think we're also seeing and really thanks to Chuck and Deb for this idea of like church and as many things occurring in the harvest as we can, and it's really easy to do that because when we see Jesus doing that as well. Field 3, discipleship. I think to me the qualitative indicator on that, my high for the weekend was sitting in on, I know he's not here anymore, but Jonah Mills, Iron on Iron last night, because not only are we seeing a second lieutenant coming out of West Point, very well equipped, very well trained, very mature in character, having spent a lot of time with Austin and Lindsay up at West Point, but he's also got this support network of folks, friends, and they're willing to iron him and challenge him. And what big indicator to me of the character is that Jonah and all these guys are going down there, plugging in immediately, and starting a church immediately within the first couple weeks of getting on ground. So that to me is like they're getting right into that dynamic training environment where they're training others and being trained, and that's just exponentially going to kind of increase what we're doing. Field 4, also again seeing rapid multiplication of churches. Church identity I don't think is an issue for us. I think we get the why on that, and so that is qualitatively. And then Field 5 is just y'all, the leadership development piece. So going back to Randall talked about it, but the 5 levels of movement leadership. This network has been without an L4 for this past year. So Jim McKnight, our L4, the guy that's full-time, is able to travel and strengthen and encourage. He's been on sabbatical, and so we've been without that, and the wheels have not kind of fallen off. And that's not, we're busy. That's not anything that like Britton or I, or even Britton
Brendan and I and the Wilsons and the Nows can do. That's y'all doing it, and kind of keeping the wheels on. So that's field 5.
So we're gonna brag on Jesus, okay? This morning I was reading in Revelation and the angel said, fear God and glorify him. So hopefully all this comes out of a fear God and glorify him. This is really not about us or any individuals in No Place Left. In fact, when you're drawing out your gen map, is there a little bit of tension with like, I'm not the only person having a major impact in this person's life, but we do it so that we take responsibility. But this morning I was reading and praying through my prayer wall, and this is a great verse. It seemed good to me to declare the signs and wonders which the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is everlasting kingdom. His dominion is from generation to generation.
Amen.
I want to declare the wonderful things, hi Caleb, that God has done. And so let's make sure we frame this right. This is really about Jesus and his glory. So if I can do this, let's go. Okay, this is right now a rough, fuzzy guesstimate of where No Place Left is. What Jared was saying, that data collection, especially with an all-volunteer army, is very difficult to collect, okay? But that's okay. What we'll do is we'll just collect what we get, cast vision with us, and just tell everybody, really, this is just a fraction of what God is doing around the world in No Place Left. And by the way, is No Place Left an organization?
No.
Is it a method?
No.
Is it a group of individuals leading this?
No.
What is No Place Left?
Movement of the Spirit of God to proclaim Jesus in the highest heavens and all the earth.
All right. What did you? I like that.
It's a vision.
It's a vision. So the Legacy Church that's preaching the gospel every Sunday and doesn't have a clue about CPMs is really part of No Place Left, okay? For the person that hates CPM because they can't stand the method, but they're sharing the gospel and making disciples, they're part of No Place Left. Whether they want to be or not, because Jesus is No Place Left. Okay? He wants to see the gospel spread to the ends of the earth. So it's not about an organization. It's not even a method. If you walk out of here and say, I never want to see the 4 fields again, but I'm going to share the gospel, make disciples, plant churches, or any part of it, you're really part of Jesus' No Place Left strategy. Okay? That's the end of that sermon. Sorry. Okay. So Deb and I just visited Dallas, Fort Worth. So we're going to zoom in on one particular geographical network. Hun, tell the story about Dallas, Fort Worth.
Okay, so there's a couple of guys who've been in Dallas Fort Worth, and they've been trying to reach the city for Jesus. They were focused on particular people group, but they had an iron on iron last February, and were encouraged to kind of have a more macro strategy instead of a micro. And since February, which is what, 8-9 months ago, how many churches have they planted since?
Yeah.
It's like they've grown. They just have exploded, and God has done.
Yeah. There's our church growth pattern right there.
Okay, so 1 is over there, 50 is just like in your mind, switch it around. And while we were there was a pastor that we met, a pastor of outreach at a First Baptist church. And we actually, when we were there visiting about a week ago, we did the iron on iron in the Baptist church, because these folks have been training this pastor at this Baptist church. And that evening, we were involved with their outreach, which there were over 60 people that had been trained how to share the gospel, how to follow up, how to, this whole 4-field strategy, had been trained in the 411, and since March have been going out and sharing the gospel with the people in their city. And they had it all organized. There were 3 apartment complexes, and everybody went out. And this was 80-year-olds down to 8-year-olds. And, there were younger kids too. Of course, the younger kids weren't sharing the gospel, but they were there as well. But, that a huge range of ages. There were whole families that had come out, teenagers, middle schoolers, the whole 9 yards. And I think we were kind of shocked, but really encouraged that, I think that when these, larger churches start to see that they can do this, it's going to be game over. So we were like really, really excited about what had happened in such a short amount of time, really.
And they've been at it. Remember, they've been at it for 5 years. 5 years ago, we did an iron on iron with Kyle, and he was crying in his Cheerios like we were, because they hadn't seen anything. And yet, in the last 8 months, just with a few shifts in what they're doing, but mostly because they were persistent, they've seen this radical growth in DFW, and they're tearing it up. So that's kind of a snapshot. You guys, and by the way, Jared and Britton, thank you for your leadership and filling in, and for all of you as well. Just thank you. You are such an encouragement to Deb and I, because we see you slugging it out. It's something when you get to kind of stand on the hilltop, and if I could do it, my computer's broke, so I can't. I would show you the gen map that we put together with just 8 networks, and you'd just be blown away by the numbers of churches and the numbers of generations of churches. By the way, a generation to me is new birth. If you lead somebody to Christ, you've had a baby, that's the next generation. If you plant a new church, new birth, it's the next generation. Okay? So you would see generations of churches and disciples. All I can do is describe it to you. You would be in awe of what Jesus is doing. But so I want to thank you. Can you hand me my phone?
Sure.
But a lot of folks. By the way, anybody taking any scrutiny for what you're doing? Scrutiny for what you're doing? Just a little bit. Deb and I, we've taken our licks, but what's interesting is that now it's you all taking the licks, you know. And so we're kind of echelons above reality and out of the main kill zone of the ambush. And but now you all are having to defend what you're doing. And it's interesting how people have come out of the woodwork to scrutinize what you're doing. Here's the deal. Do not throw rocks back, okay? Everybody doing kingdom work is doing the right thing no matter how they're doing it. So let's celebrate every single inch of progress in the kingdom. So you're going to have to take it on the chin. You're going to have to defend what you're doing biblically, but don't bash the bride. You get in trouble when you bash the bride, okay? So Deb and I have a saying. What's our saying?
Same team?
Same team, same fight, but run from...
Okay. Run from Saul, run toward Goliath. Like, just keep in mind who the real enemy is. You know, the real enemy for us is lostness. That's what we're trying to go after. But just like David, he wasn't trying to go after Saul. He was trying to run away from Saul. So when you do get that scrutiny and that, you know, just your thought should be run away from that and run toward lostness.
Yeah. Lostness is Goliath, okay? Not your brother and sister. All right. So one of the things that we're and everybody should be concerned about is being a mile wide and an inch deep, right? That's one of the greatest concerns about a CPM. So let's zero in on one church of 18 people, and you know, it's just a sample, it's just one church, and ask the question, where's the beef? Okay, where's the depth? All right, as far as the assessment of the leadership of that church, 100% said they were adequately encouraged by their leaders. 100% said they were adequately led by their leadership in a godly manner. 80% of that church said that they were adequately challenged. 20% said sometime. So that church, their leadership needs to grow in the area of being challenging, okay? Which is crazy for me because the 3/3 process challenged my socks off, okay? But they said they need to be more challenged.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is in this church of 18 people, there are some spouses that don't attend, but that, you know, like answered the question. So they may be not attending. That's why they're not challenged.
All right. 70% of the church says we do a good job of loving. 30% say we need to improve. Okay? That's an honest assessment. 70% say that they feel like they adequately worship God as individuals. And about 60% say they adequately worship God in our setting. Okay? So those numbers are kind of like, oh man, we need to do some improving. That church of 18 people gave $120,000 last year. I think that's pretty good giving right there. 50% of the church shares the gospel once to 3 times a week. 50%. 28% share the gospel 4 to 5 times a week. And 14% of the church shares the gospel 6 or more times. How do you feel like that church is doing with the gospel? That's pretty good. All right, time in prayer. 41% of the church spends 30 to 45 minutes in prayer a day. 11% of the church spends 60 to 90 minutes in prayer a day. And then 17% of the church spends an hour and a half to 2 hours in prayer a day. How would you rate that church as far as their depth in prayer? Okay. Let's go to the Word. 30% of the church spends 60 minutes or more in the Word a day. 38% spends 45 to 60 minutes of time in the Word a day. And 23% spends 30 to 45 minutes in the Word a day. How would you rate that church on the Word? Okay. 28% of the church has baptized somebody. Okay, so for some of y'all, those numbers are like you're allergic to them. You know, you see that and you go, oh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies. But when you look at that church of 18 people, would you say they're healthy, not healthy?
Very happy.
Do you see some depth in that church?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you know what time it is? It's not van time. It's time to pray for laborers. Son, would you pray for labor?
Father, we come to you again, and we continue to beg you that you would send more laborers into the harvest. Because Jesus, you said that the harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Father, we beg you for more harvesters, more laborers. We beg you for laborers on every Army installation in the U.S. and overseas, that there would be people who would have a passion to share the gospel with those around them, disciple others, gather disciples in churches, and to raise up leaders so that more laborers can go out. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
So, how many of you in the room, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll be done in 2 minutes. How many of you in the room feel like you are being led by a loving leader? Raise your hand. I think that's 100%. All right. How many of you have seen improvement in your personal and corporate worship since you've been a part of No Place Left? Okay, most. How many of you have seen improvement in your ability and your actual sharing of the gospel since you've been a part of No Place Left? Okay. How many of you have actually increased your time in prayer since you've been a part of No Place Left? Almost 100%. How many of you have increased your time in the words since you've been a part of No Place Left? How many of you have grown in your depth and understanding that you need to become like Jesus since you started with No Place Left. That's 100%. Okay? Is the depth there? Okay? Now, downstream at the very end where we have young practitioners, yeah, it's shaky. But any new person is going to be shaky. But you can see the objective. What we're aiming at. We're aiming at solid discipleship. No Place Left did not do that for you. Jesus did that for you. Solid discipleship did that for you. And that's what I'm about, and everybody else that I know in No Place Left is about. Let's get to Jesus. Okay? All right. So, this is a worldwide movement. You're a part of it. The church is waking up to the need to go deep in discipleship, to release authority to churches in every neighborhood to reach the lost. Last thing. We're doing good, but we ain't done. All right? And let me see. Come on, Matt. There we go. Every red dot, actually, every dot represents 10,000 people. The red dots represent people with less than 1% of Christianity. If we're serious about No Place Left, we've got to address the red dots on that map. And you can do that in so many different ways. The primary way that Deb and I are addressing that redness, that lostness on that map is by casting a strong vision and by training everyone that we can. And by praying our guts out that God will reach the world in our lifetime through people that have the resources. There's no other time in history where you can get online. Deb and I have done this. We've been online with people in Europe, in Russia, in the United States, in Japan, and New Zealand. And the guy in New Zealand, because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, was in his bathroom, making disciples, planting churches. We have the resources. The question is, do we have the resolve to finish the Great Commission in our lifetime? It's cool what God has done in No Place Left in 7 years. It's absolutely miraculous. But we're not even close to the finish line. We got a long ways to go. People are going to hell by the stadium full. We need to keep our nose to the grindstone. We need to, every small part, every act of obedience drives us towards the finish line. So let's celebrate, but keep working, because there's a lot of lostness out there. Okay. Let me pray and then I'll get out of the way.